very, very exciting. And we are live on the Gamification Revolution. I'm your host, Gabe Zichermann. And with me today is JP Rangaswami, Chief Scientist at Salesforce. Hi, JP.
Hi.
And JP is joining us from his home just outside of London, keeping our international theme rolling here at the Gamification Revolution. And of course, as you can expect, you can come and see me and JP and a bunch of other folks at G Summit in April 16th through the 18th in San Francisco. You can find out more at gsummit.com and use the code GREV for viewers of the Gamification Revolution and listeners on the podcast to save some money on the registration. So, JP, you've devoted, I'll throw out the first question. We already have some questions waiting to go. You've devoted the majority of your career and certainly achieved a great deal of attention for your views on, how work actually is going to evolve in the coming years. What do you think is the most important thing that corporations and enterprises need to understand about the future of work?
I think more than anything else, we've spoken about the war for talent for, I don't know, 30, 35 years, recognizing that we're moving into an environment where individual talent needs to be understood, appreciated, enhanced, developed, uh, because the nature of the challenges we're going to face at work require those individual talents to come into play. So we're not doing it because there's a rise of cult of the individual, but we're beginning to recognize that the collective required to solve the problems at work is a much more complex collective than has ever been the case before. So the war for talent is entering new ground.
Why is it more complicated than before? I mean, I get that the world has become more complicated from technology and so on, but isn't this always kind of the same cycle? Aren't we always, trying to get the best talent and making companies as big as possible? What's different?
Well, yes, it's true that we've always had the strategy of first get good people, and that hasn't actually shifted. But it's a bit like asking, why web science exists as a discipline now. Right? When I went to university, there was no such thing as computer science. If I had said I was a computer science graduate, I'd have lied because the discipline didn't exist. And after I went to university, people began to recognize the need for bringing together a set of disparate skills together into a more formal discipline. Now, 20 odd years after the web had begun, people are recognizing that web science has to exist for a similar reason because it a series of disparate disciplines that aren't just the numerate elements, but also going into anthropology, social anthropology, and understanding of how people respond to privacy. These sort of issues have to be brought into bear when you design. I think the same is true as work. We have never been as connected as we are now, and unlike any other form of connection, uh, you and I can sit across the ocean and be calm in understanding that it's only a matter of time before 8 billion people are connected. Right?
So,
I never thought we are going to have 8 billion mainframes or 8 billion sort of desktops. But I can see a time when 8 billion smart devices exist uh, in the hands of every human being, and that we have the ability not just to engage in a hierarchical fashion, but much more to connect with each other. That's huge.
okay, so let me ask you this. I mean, you're a scientist. You are a rational person. Doesn't it throw people completely off guard when you start talking about things like fun, when you start talking about subjects like engagement, when you start talking about gamification in a kind of exigent way in your work? Where do you think the overlap is between the kind of the science and and these elements of creating engagement?
Okay, my suspicion is it's less about the science coming in the way than the marketing. Okay, there is the cultural divide, which people have tried to suggest it's a generational divide, and evidence, which is what a scientist would look for, does not suggest that there is a generational divide. It's one of the terms that intrigues me is we used to talk about digital natives and talking about generations and to do with being a native or not. And more recently, I've seen terminology that moves away from such thinking to say, are you a digital resident or a digital visitor? And I'm more comfortable with an understanding that there is neither age nor gender nor, it's where do you feel comfortable? If you live in digital space and can, inhabit it comfortably without feeling thrown by it, then you're a digital residence. And if you go in to a digital space and then rush out as quickly as possible, you're more likely to be a digital visitor. And that separation, I think, is as true when it comes to terms like gamification. I saw it happen with blogs. I saw it happen with wikis. I even saw it happen with Google, right? Uh, the modern culture has been to create terms that actually affect people downstream because the change is as much in the battle to do with the word. And yes, there has been resistance to people saying, gamifying work is not a good thing to happen because work shouldn't be fun. But more and more, what I've seen is that that reaction was initial. Uh, Human beings actually don't have a problem with work being fun. As soon as you start explaining to them it's about improving engagement, it's about improving performance, they'll live with the term. But when you throw the term at them, the initial reaction is to walk away.
That's a great point, and I want to talk some more about that. And I want to remind everyone that if you have any questions for either JP or me, you can click on the button that says submit a question. And if you have a camera, we can bring you on to ask the question. There's some lining up already in the question queue, and we're going to get to some of those in a minute. And I'm here with JP Rangaswami, Chief Scientist for Salesforce.com, a company that most of you will know of. And we're just talking about how the perception of the concept of gamification in the enterprise. And so my question to you is, you said that you don't think that there's a generational gap. Is there a cultural gap between the way different people in different parts of the world perceive the question of work and fun, work and play, gamification in this context?
Again, early indications suggested that there were, but as you dig into it and take away the initial response, I think there's far less of it because it goes back to people think something is foreign when they don't have a basis to agree with what you're saying because they don't have common ground. Right? Words like gamification don't help create the common ground to begin with, but as soon as you switch it to things like this is about being able to perform at a higher level, that you need to be able to master these skills, to be able to connect that mastery to a higher purpose, that every organization works this way and has been trying to do this, which is why, when I met you in June last year, we were talking about the Mihail Csikszentmihalyi and, flow, to saying these are issues that have been discussed in depth by psychologists, by people who've been trying to make work go better. And my sense is that in a way gamification has backed into solving this problem because it's rather than looking for a problem to solve, people went and said, let's look at, let's step back and look at this. Work is changing. Work is no longer a linear flow of so many parts per hour passing through on a treadmill or on some sort of assembly line. Humans who work together, knowledge workers in this form, beyond the manufacturing environment, tend to need to have to collaborate to do this. They do this around objects that they're going to identify, attach things to. The nature of work has changed to a level where hierarchical selection of either task or of team is less effective. And if you want to improve the effectiveness, then you start making those decisions as close to the domain knowledge as possible, because the hierarchy was just a tool to solve a scale problem at a time when the Industrial Revolution was in full swing. We don't need that hierarchy anymore because we are able to connect people. So as soon as we think of it that way, you're saying, okay, so the problem is the world of work has changed. Which environment knows something about this? Hello, Gabe. I see Ahmed saying it's okay, but Gabe has disappeared from my screen. I can't hear you, Gabe.
Hey JP, hey everybody. We're experiencing some technical difficulties right now.
Hi,
Gabe
Ivan.
is
I can
coming
see
back
you.
on. Yes. Gabe experienced a little bit of a connection difficulty, but he's coming on right now. So just stay put and we'll be back in a minute.
Okay.
Hi, sorry about that. We had a little bit of technical difficulty.
I can see you, Gabe, but you're frozen on me.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Awesome. So sorry everybody about that little technical glitch over here. Sorry. It's amazing technology, but it's so glitchy. Um, so actually, I want to get to a question. Actually, a question here from Dhruv Sapra, who's been waiting very patiently as I've been attempting to get our internet up and running here in New York City. So Dhruv asked actually two questions, JP, which I thought you would find particularly interesting. And he asks, can gamification of the workplace really work in a corporate world where there's already a lot of games behind the scenes? And as for sort of his first part of that question, I want to take in a different direction. Isn't the workplace already full of games? Don't people play games in the workplace all the time? Don't they? Haven't they already kind of done this a lot? And do we want to change that kind of game playing behavior in the workplace? Are we trying to shift in a different direction?
Okay, I think that I'm going to take a leaf out of a completely different part of the gaming industry
Go for it.
and talk about the ability within many video games to freeze and replay. Okay? People in many industries, particularly that got political, so you can equate some of what you mean by people playing games as acting political. Uh, these things thrive in environments where there is a blame culture. I will never defend the right of a blame culture to exist. I cannot accept that it is human to blame others. I think it's a construct that extended as we built the theory of the firm out and as we tried to organize. I'd love to see the end of that. What I see with the possibility of bringing gaming techniques into the workplace is that we are able to be more dispassionate and say, let's take a look at what actually happened here. Let's play that back and coach and mentor people to saying, that's where you went wrong, right? And that kind of open feedback loop based on the connectedness of people, based on a mutual respect and understanding, and on a focus on saying, I'm going to learn more, I'm going to be able to improve my skills more, I'm going to get to a higher level of performance here. That goes hand in hand with a mentoring and teaching type environment and the ability to save and replay, right? And saving and replaying are because we've got things like activity streams and intention signals, the ability for all of us to be able to record what we're doing, when we did it, where we did it, with whom we did it. That record is actually going to be an incredible teaching tool for us to be able to learn what we do right and wrong, to get the feedback from our peers and from the network, to figure out where someone has done it better, exactly as we would do in sort of a massively multi-person playing world.
And on that note, actually, much has been made about the benefits of being able to fail easily in a game without consequences. The idea that we learn a lot from
Yes.
failure. Can you talk about how that will apply to the workplace?
Well, the same thing will take place, at work. Consequences happen because we have allowed ourselves to sort of to almost decay into blame cultures. Because finding out the root cause of something, understanding what the development needs are, being able to identify the skills that are needed, even being able to identify the nature of the problem, these are things that have historically been quite difficult to do in the traditional extended hierarchies. As we've moved more to allowing people to express what they're doing and how they're doing it at the coalface, as it were, all our information flows. This is almost like saying, you and I are comfortable talking about the quantified self because we have many tools and sensors to be able to measure, whether it's a Fitbit or a Nike Fuel, or for that matter, a pacemaker. When are we going to feel as comfortable of saying we live in an age where the quantified firm can exist? Right? Part of the reason why gamification techniques are even useful in the world of work today is because we now have tools to be able to record and measure so much. We can stop the emotion of guesswork and higher end sort of finger pointing to saying, let's actually take a look at what went down, and you start trying to fix the problem, not find the culprit. Right?
Yeah.
And this also reflects the fact that we need to look much more at teamwork. Right? We can't solve these problems in isolation. So finger pointing is a way of saying who's the winner at work. Okay. And that sucks. I mean, that is a terrible concept.
Well, that's a great question. It actually leads into the next question. But before we continue, just want to remind everyone, you're on the Gamification Revolution. I'm Gabe Zichermann, your host, and I'm here with JP Rangaswami, Chief Scientist for Salesforce.com. And JP and I will be at Gamification Summit along with 60 or so other awesome speakers this April in San Francisco, 16th through the 18th. Check out gsummit.com for more information or come see us. And just before that break, JP, you were talking about the concept of winners and losers in the workplace. And Dhruv, who actually asked two really interesting questions. The second half of his question, I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on, which is this issue of how we promote teamwork, how we create cohesive teams and engage teams in an environment where there's a lot of kind of winner-oriented gameplay, where there's scarcity of opportunities at the top of the ladder, and many organizations, that push people. The only way to demonstrate that you're successful is to become CEO of the company. How do we deal with all that?
Okay. I mean, I think that first and foremost, even in hierarchical society, I have seen regularly people who what they call stand on the shoulders of giants. Right? that you see leaders who recognize that their leadership position owes much to the fact that they are, rising in effect on the work that they've been able to lead others to do, on the motives of those people. So, my favorite definition of leadership actually goes back to a man who made chairs, Max Dupre, who said, a leader's job is to provide strategy and vision and to say thank you. In between, he is a servant and a debtor. We're moving into a world where, my dad had one job. I will probably have seven by the time I retire, and my children will probably do seven jobs at the same time.
Huh.
Right? The nature of the contract of work has changed. So now a company, big is bad in so many respects, right? You see the traditional almost models of authority being questioned, challenged, disrespected. In that kind of time when you have to attract talent and hold on to that talent, it's going to be your values and ethics that sort of, drive that.
What,
And those values and ethics, sorry,
yeah, what do you say to people though who say, well, JP, that sounds great, but it really sounds incredibly idealistic. I mean, compared to where the average corporation is today, what the lives of people, actually working in companies today, I mean, they're super hierarchical. How do we get from,
yeah, but then, when you see what we're doing, when I see what's happening at work already in terms of how people say thank you, as soon as you have tools to be able to signal to people, well done and thank you. And we've had it in ratings, we've had it in reviews, we've had it in, the ability to signal feedback because we had the tool to be able to do it. Right? In every sphere that I've seen, you provide a tool to give feedback, and people are giving that feedback. Okay? That means the willingness to say, well done, thank you, I like it, this was useful, I appreciate the time you put into it. That almost signaling back of respect for an altruistic push is something that doesn't sort of sit well with traditional models of work. But traditional models of work wouldn't have explained a Wikipedia. Traditional models of work wouldn't have explained how, when social networks get embedded in the workplace, people are actually surfacing where the talent lies, where the assistance is provided. And these tools are actually very, very, they are reducing transaction costs of the 21st century. When everyone is connected, you need to know who the go to person is for something. You need to know which particular file or deck or document is the most valuable to read at a given time, which video to look at. And guess what? We are using social signaling of things like the ratings, the RTs, the plus ones, the likes, to be able to surface that quickly and to prioritize it. Right? Well, since the year dot, the concept of the theory of the firm has been about reducing transaction costs, one of which is to do with search. As a result of being able to find the right people and to bring the right assets to bear, you are more likely to get an effective execution.
let's go back to the tools for a second, because you've talked about the tools. Now, of course, Salesforce, and this dovetails with the question that's waiting here in the queue, Salesforce has made kind of a big bet on the tools that enable feedback in communities and acquired that company Ripple, which is now work.com at Salesforce, last year for a princely sum, and of course, transforming a lot of things. Is that the kind of tool that you're talking about?
For sure, being able to do something that people have avoided in the past, but is actually meaningful. Once you walk away from a blame culture, performance management becomes really important. In which field would you expect improvement to take place without monitoring performance, making sure the right feedback loops are there, making sure that the development capacity, the appreciations are present. And once you have those, you're much more likely to say, okay, do people really understand what it is we're trying to do collectively and individually? Is that challenging enough to be attractive to the people doing it? Are the skills there to do that? How do you get the collective of skills within the team to make that happen? How do you make sure that the feedback loops are there for progress to be monitored? How do you deal with development opportunities that arise when you say, well, I haven't got everything I need to do this? And all this is more visible, more shareable when you provide a network that allows people to look at what is committed, how it's being done, what skills are being brought to bear, and what the feedback is.
So in this
So I love it.
Yeah, so in this regard, a gamified system like work.com, which enables people to give each other feedback quickly and easily, is it principally fun, is this principally work so well? Has it been such a big success? Do you think because it takes the confrontation out?
Right. I think there are three pieces to it. One, we never had the ability to signal that easily before. So it reduces the cost of doing it.
Of saying
Right.
thank you
In
or
the
nice
past, if you
job or
yeah. So if you and I were colleagues far away, my ability to signal that to you may have required me to write you an email, and then I have to figure out, what am I actually going to say? How do I make sure it signals the value I want to respect you for, rather than it becomes sort of sleazy. Is there a way of my solving this because there is a standardized approach to doing it? Okay, that's the first piece, that there are tools to be able to do it. The second element is that it was hard to even discover where the value lay in the work that was done. So, people may have worked in very large companies without any idea what the person next door to them was doing, much less someone in another country. So, having a basis to be able to view what constituted work, and work like people like Yuri Engstrom and Hugh MacLeod spent time on this idea of social objects. And when we work, we tend to collaborate around objects, whether they're documents, quotations, proposals, presentations, spreadsheets. It doesn't matter what. You tend to have a, a an item that you work together on, and how to make those items shareable, how they can embed the value of the comments around them, get enriched through that learning, and then get accessible consistently because the search cost to find them when you really need them get lowered. All that becomes possible because you're still concentrating on this idea of visibility, transparency, simplicity of access, and these things have completely transformed the world we work in.
Um, so actually, on a related note to that, and Ahmed asked this question. Thanks for this question, Ahmed, which is about Salesforce. And if you look at Salesforce's contribution to kind of the gamification of work, the company appears to have made some fairly big bets with Jigsaw maybe a few years ago, Ripple, and now sort of Work.com. Your participation. Gamification is done at the sales kickoff by Eli Cohen. There's been a lot of gamification around Salesforce, partnership with Bunchball and Badgeville and so on. So why is this, and if it is, why is this so important, in this space for Salesforce to have such a position both on the future of work and on gamification?
We've always been about improving engagement with the customer. Right? I like to think of us as saying we look for how to reduce friction and take out latency between our customer and their customers. So initially that was about traditional CRM, make sure we actually understood who the customer was, what the customer wanted, how the customer sort of behaves within that. Then soon people couldn't distinguish between sales and service, so it was important to get a holistic view of that engagement. Then, as you mentioned, Jigsaw and what became data.com, it became more important to say, can we take out some of the frictions of mismatches in names and addresses and static data like that? As customers wanted to be able to innovate faster and participate in innovation, opening up the platform became important. Connecting with each other in order to accelerate the pace of learning and of innovation led to Chatter. uh, Recognizing that the customer was no longer in a walled garden, but that customer activity had moved into the social networks and into the mobile spaces meant understanding what was happening in those spaces and being able to engage on that basis became more important. And all this was always with a view to saying, how do you improve engagement? And then when I look at work.com, I'm sort of thinking, well, isn't this one of the linchpins of engagement? Make sure people understand what they're doing, why it's important, how they do it, and being able to share it. Look for a sharing of the barriers to performing and how we can help each other develop on it, and have active feedback loops. Because it's amazing how much more gets done when you're just able to signal, hey, great job, thanks for your help. I appreciate it.
Right.
These are not words that anyone's ever going to convince me don't belong to work. And if work becomes more fun because we say, hey, thanks for that, I appreciated it, it helped me, you did a great job there, and those things are going to be seen as it's somehow demeaning work, then I think people have a different problem. Right? I spend my time, saying which part of this do you disagree with? And so most of the time, as soon as you bring it down to performance and engagement and improving performance levels, everyone feels relaxed, right? So the reactions are more, it's almost, that's why I brought in things like people reacted 15 years ago to Google, saying, what kind of dumb word is that? What's that got to do with work? What do you mean you want to Google something, right? And now you wouldn't even think twice about it. So it takes time for some of these to die down.
Let me ask you one last question, and thanks for that, Ahmad. It sounds like, you definitely make it sound like Salesforce has had a whole, strategy, and it's evolving in a natural way. And I'm sure there's going to be,
I think Mark Benioff has been very clear in saying, focus on the customer. I've never met anyone who focuses on the customer like he does.
well,
It's a,
right.
it's an object lesson.
As the market is evolving in this direction, there's more and more need to deliver that, I guess, which is awesome, and we're looking forward to more of that. So my last kind of question for you is, we've been talking a lot, I think, in the context of enterprises that deal largely in knowledge workers and folks that are, higher value, not to suggest that anyone's lower value, but more expensive employees, people doing, more complicated problem-solving tasks. Is there anything that you can say sort of quickly on the subject of organizations that have large numbers of, let's say, more customer service, frontline, transactional employees, and how these concepts might apply to them?
Okay, I mean, one of the things that I've been dreaming about for a while is, particularly when people spoke of things like inbound call centers, and it's these places, I visited them. I worked at BT for a number of years, as you probably are aware. I was chief scientist there. And it's very easy to to have this perception that these are not places with high morale, that people have churn and motivation's not that easy. But actually I found very, very professional people, when I've gone in there. These are the sort of the stereotypes that get made rather than the truth. But I'd have loved to have been there years ago and said, how about we design, for the different teams in a service center, something that looks like a Tetris game, right? And the call handling time relates to, and all the call handling times are sub 5 seconds, but the pieces, right, relate to how much time you've taken, not just to deal with picking up the call, but with solving the customer. And the customer has a role in deciding the shape that the call should represent.
Right.
So you bring the customer engaged into the process. So when I'm receiving help from someone, I can trigger a response to saying, you know what, that deserves an F-shaped piece in yellow, and I think that's what you're looking for. And so, the idea that, and it's not competition to kill someone else. It's recognizing that different people on the team are going to yield the different skills needed for the collective outcome to be valuable. And there are different ways of bringing that together, but I'm confident that if you concentrate on the classics of, mastery, purpose, the bringing in of social, having the respect and the dignity that autonomy provides, these things will start affecting you regardless of the nature of the job you have. Right? In the knowledge worker world, the answers are obvious. Okay. In the rest of it, they're as meaningful, but it takes a little time to embed them correctly.
Fascinating. And I think that process and systems view is a brilliant insight. And of course, we've been here today on the gamification revolution. We're out of time for our session, but I want to thank our awesome guest, JP Rangaswami, Chief Scientist for Salesforce.com. And you can follow JP on Twitter at Jobsworth, where he has a lot of really exciting things to say about the future of work and some startling insights today about how to design for engagement. I'm your host, Gabe Zichermann. You can come see JP and me and a bunch of other folks at Gamification Summit this year, April 16th through the 18th, talking about how to create engagement both in the enterprise and on your marketing side. Visit gsummit.com for more information. Use the code GREV to save on that. And just as a reminder for those of you, the next episode of the Gamification Revolution will be inaugurating our G feedback feature, where startups can come on and get 5 minutes of feedback from the experts on the show about their engagement design and hear a little bit about their input. And if you want to be part of that, go to gamification.co/live and submit your startup and make sure that you get upvoted so you're at the top of the list. Once again, I'm Gabe Zichermann. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, JP.
Thank you and goodbye.
Keep having fun now, everyone.
Yep. See you soon.
Bye.